What the fuck are you talking about now? There's no way that you're saying that there hasn't been significant economic growth and addition to the world GDP in 50 years.
There is a website, whatthefuckhappened in1971.com. Literally, read it and look at the graph. Okay.
All right, guys. Welcome to the 4th episode of Books, Beer, and Banter, where we're finishing Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. This is the 4th and by far longest section of the book, where we're focusing on the scientific resolution. I'm an asshole and just finished reading it about 5 minutes ago. Had to
Literally
on like a 3-hour hold so I could finish my section. What'd you guys think?
Honestly,
Joey thought it was boring as fuck.
super boring, dude. I thought the best section of it was the last couple sections, and not even because it was like super detailed, but like it just opened like a lot of questions for it of like the future of everything. I don't know if we want to just like jump around, like talking about like the 3 different ways that we could like supersede like natural selection, being like the cyborg, like the biologically engineering, and like the inorganic like engineering, which is like something that's like on the cusp.
I don't know. I thought that stuff was like less interesting to me. Maybe just because I wanted to get the book over with, but I felt like reading the stuff like in the beginning of this last part was like more interesting for me.
Really? I was struggling through it. I was like, yay.
The only reason I agree with Shane here is because I feel like the stuff at the end was almost more relevant, and I feel like I have a better understanding than a lot of like the more historical shit. Like I feel like the more, you go more than 20 years ago in our past, and like my fucking knowledge of shit just drops off so
significantly.
Like it's crazy. Yeah. It is embarrassing.
All right, so let's start at the beginning then.
Yeah.
So the discovery of ignorance. Love the point he made when he was like, if somebody in the, I don't know if it was like 1000 AD fell asleep for 500 years and woke up, it wouldn't be that much fucking different.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody from 1500 AD, that same time period that person woke up from, and fell asleep for 500 years and woke up in 2000, they'd be like, holy shit, what the fuck happened,
Yeah.
And like, I forget what is it, Morrison's law? Or what's the thing about like the technology curve and how it gets like quicker and quicker and quicker?
Yeah. It's
Moore's law.
Like the doubling of.
Exactly. Like you don't gotta wait 500 years. If you sleep 50 fucking years, if you were asleep today and in 2070 you woke up, you'd probably be like, holy shit, a lot.
I think we're like,
I would hope so.
Of Moore's law, like I think that we're right around the peak of it. Like you can't put more storage on such a small. Like we're now.
Well, they've been finding
the size of atoms.
Yeah. Well, every time that for Moore's law, every time that we've come up on a new. Essentially every couple of years, it's kind of like everybody thinks that we can't push things any harder.
Yeah.
And every couple of years, we've come up with some way to put more transistors on a chip to have more computing power.
It's about computing power, but still, I feel like that has a lot to do with like what he was saying in the beginning about like resources. You know what I mean? Every time somebody thinks like resources are going to go extinct, because there's no doubt that most of what we use right now is finite. I mean, even solar energy is finite. If you like go long enough, like sun's gonna die out eventually. But
well, then we're all gonna die out. I mean,
yeah, but dude, like how far away is that? You know what I mean? My like great kids to like the 20th fucking exponent can worry about that shit. You know, I'm not worried about the sun dying out in my life. I got more fucking prominent things to worry about. But like how like it is true how every time like a resource like starts to come to. I feel like not even depletion, but once people start like thinking about it, like it's not too late. But like people for the last maybe 15, 20 years have been like, oh, like fossil fuels are gonna run out, But like when that shit happens, like we're like, all right, well, dude, we got solar, you got Musk and his whole brigade, and like then it's like, I mean, I don't know jack shit about nuclear, but is that even a depletable resource? Like, could we run out of atoms to split? Like, I don't even know.
No.
I don't think so.
I think
it has to do with the actual. It's plutonium or different, different resources. There, you can absolutely run out, but we don't consume it at such a high rate.
Yeah, nuclear is not like a big thing, is it?
It is.
How much of like the U.S. is powered by nuclear energy?
I'm not sure. I really have no idea, but it's significant.
It's not significant.
No,
no, it is significant. It's definitely significant. There's a nuclear power plant, like I think 50 miles outside of New York City.
Oh shit.
Yeah, but there's very little development being done of any sort of new nuclear power plants since
Chernobyl.
We kind of, fuck
20%.
That's a lot. Also, I think you're wrong, Shane. I think that we still add funding to nuclear power plants.
No, it's like a hot debated issue around renewable energy. Everybody's afraid of nuclear energy because it produces waste and stuff like that. But it is one of the most, accessible paths to a renewable source of energy, or just better, a source of energy with a better carbon footprint, you could say.
Is nuclear considered renewable?
I don't think it's considered renewable, but it has like a much smaller carbon footprint. Like it requires, there's no CO2 emissions from nuclear.
Isn't it crazy that you split an atom?
Yeah, that's what happens. I also know, I don't know enough about like the nuclear bomb still.
None.
Like I need to watch an hour-long documentary on it to like understand what happens, because it's just so ridiculous.
Bro, an atom we're talking about here, something you can't even see. You break in half and basically you blow up a quarter of Japan from it.
Well, I think it's more than one atom.
You think?
It's more than one atom.
How many atoms is it?
I don't know.
You don't know. So it could be one though.
It's definitely not one.
How do you know? How many is it then? 10? 100,000?
Really
no, I want your fucking opinion on it.
I'm thinking
before you shoot me down on this.
Of millions.
Hundreds of millions.
I'm thinking
you're looking at Google,
billions.
So I don't care what you're thinking anymore.
I'm thinking billions. Oh, well, it is some very large number because it's in scientific notation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I thought the whole
so a fuckload of atoms.
I don't know.
I don't want to talk about this atoms anymore. There was where was this? Oh, here's a quote.
Like a
so yeah, it's definitely a lot. In 1775, Asia accounted for this is so recent, which is what like kind of blew my mind. So just as recently as 1775, Asia accounted for 80% of the world economy. And then by 1900, Europeans firmly controlled the world's economy and most of its territory. In 1950, Western Europe and the United States together accounted for more than half of global production, where China's portion had been
5%.
reduced to 5%.
Yeah.
So they went from Asia as a whole went from 80% and dropped down to well below 50.
I feel like it's cyclical though. It's coming back. What was the reasoning for them? Oh, because it was like a cultural thing that they kind of
it had to do. I think it tied back into like to some degree about like ignorance and the ability to like think beyond what we know. That Europe had been thinking in terms of the unknown and them being in a state of ignorance for such a period of time that when it came to like thinking on a bigger scale and expanding the world, they'd said that Europeans had been drawing maps and leaving parts of the maps blank, like not making assumptions that things were there. And it was just had a lot to do with the way that that society thought. And like he said it right off the bat in the first couple pages, that the willingness to admit ignorance has made modern science more dynamic, supple, and inquisitive than any previous tradition of knowledge. And I think it just ties directly to that he had a whole thing on it.
I actually just saw this video on Twitter. I don't know how relevant it is, but it was talking about like maps and their like distortions based on who makes them. Like I forgot that it begins with an M, the map a lot of people use, like Mercury or something like that.
Mercurial.
It might be something. It was something like that, and it was showing how like it was either like Iceland or Greenland was like
Oh my god.
basically half the size of fucking South America. It's like, bro, it's not even close. It's like the size of like 3 Rhode Islands or something like that. And it just reminded me of that when like you leave the maps blank, or even like the first maps that they were drawing out that are all connected, and like that just shows like how little people actually knew about what was going on.
Yeah. Honestly, I forget exactly. I feel like he very much painted the picture why Europeans and Europe in general expanded at such a rate that they did.
I think it was the inquisitive nature. Honestly, I think that's like what was a big part of it. Is
well,
like
he
you were
talks about
saying.
that we had the scientific method and we were looking for ways to constantly improve.
It also had to do with
like
them always like they wouldn't go on these expeditions just military folk on board. It would be a botanist, it would be a handful of scientists, and everything would be helpful in the sense of they'd come back with the botanist having a better understanding of like what exists in what end up being South America, Central America, therefore like fueling new medicines, and a geologist having a better understanding of like ore and different minerals. And
I feel like that shit was like honestly like a ruse. Like I think the benefit that we got was so great, but like I think it was like, oh yeah, like this is scientific expeditions, and it was always like more of like a conquistador fucking thing, where it's like, yo, we're gonna like we'll send 100 military men and 5 scientists, and this is the name of science. But like we're gonna slaughter every single person in our wake until we get what we want, And like they say,
it wasn't even a ruse. I feel it was to benefit both, and there was no denying that it was.
I guess it was a time where you could,
other absolutely,
and like just be okay with it. Like, how about that section with South America with the Aztecs and the Incas, dude? They were just, I was like, holy shit! Like, first of all, such a small group of people took over that whole South American area, but it's like, don't you almost like feel bad, you know what I mean? Like probably you should, but it's like they come there like, oh, like we're from the king, like we're just like doing an exploratory thing, and then they hold the fucking emperor hostage. I'm like, dude, they take over the whole shit.
There was like 300 of them in a city or in an empire of millions of people.
Yeah, but like when you have advanced technology, dude, when you got a musket and you're fighting a fucking wooden sword, like the odds are kind of in your favor,
Yeah. No, but going back to the whole like scientific fueling, even though it happened to be from like an empirical standpoint that they were going on these trips, but the fact that science played such a big role, when they were talking about James Cook like being a part of the Royal Navy and how he had cured scurvy by feeding citrus to the people that traveled with him, because they were lacking vitamin C. They had this entire section on he was like, more of the information collected by the expedition, particularly the astronomical, geographical, meteorological and anthropological data, was of obvious political and military value. Sorry, I lost my thought.
Well.
There you go. So James Cook, what a guy.
So I think one of the things that I like found interesting from this whole conversation, like he gets into the idea of capitalism and how that came about and how much of an influence like capitalism had on the development of the world and people seeking profits and constantly looking to do things. And one thing that I've always looked at, like I've always looked at communism and like, and forms of fascism and said, look at this, look at all the atrocities that this has produced in the world, like in Russia, in China, in Germany, etc. And like Russia, especially and China with millions of people just dying of starvation. And you could look at that and be like, oh, it doesn't work. It's bad. It's a bad system. But then he starts talking about like the side effects of capitalism. And I don't really think I've ever held capitalism to the same standards, where not saying that I like am anti-capitalism now all of a sudden. I'm definitely not. But there's this one part in here, I don't even know where it is, but he talks about the people, the Bengali people, and how the the East India Trading Company or something, one of those big like trading companies, basically went into the Bengali, the country, and they caused essentially, I think it was a drought or a famine, because they were just like abusing the resources and not using them properly and everything just for capital gain. And it resulted in the death and starvation of 10 million people, or 30% of their population.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, like unchecked capitalism has its flaws too, you know, as like a not against, like there's so many events in history of like, this is just one example of how capitalism unchecked results in people abusing their power. And it's just like an argument against libertarianism.
Wait,
Also,
against libertarianism?
Yeah, this
because libertarianism is no government, right?
Basically, is a very small government. And
so libertarianists
essentially
and capitalists basically are the same people.
Libertarians believe that there should be no government involvement in the free markets.
Laissez-faire, as they call it.
Sure, yeah.
That's totally what they do. That's what they call it, bro. Are you correcting me in my French, Lucas? Is that what you're doing right now? You think you know it more than me? It's laissez-faire, guys. First of all, oui. All right, whatever. So as you were saying, for Lucas rudely,
Joey's drunk.
I thought we were doing something
to get on that level too.
Don't worry, I'm getting there.
Chug it.
I have like a water here. I can't drink these Rolling Rocks. It's like absurd. They're so bad.
Shotgun one right now.
Just do it.
No.
Just do it.
No, I'm
just
literally not doing it.
Come on, bro. Just do it.
Why not?
Shane.
No, I'm literally not doing
for
that.
For the views. Do it for the views.
It's not for the... What
Shane,
do you mean? You do it.
I don't have...
None of us have
my
Rolling
sixth fucking...
Well, that's too bad. I don't either.
It's done. Dude.
A sixth pack?
You're such...
Okay, we're really getting off the rails here, boys.
A bitch.
Oh, God.
All right. This chapter, honestly, was pretty boring. I don't have that much to talk about. I didn't have that many interesting ideas come out of this chapter. Like, I'm pulling teeth here trying to, like, the only thing that's literally the thing about, like, I guess, like, the ideas around capitalism and things like that and the effect on the world, I think were interesting, but it just, like, didn't really inspire any unique thoughts other than the fact of the thing that I just said of, like, holding capitalism to a higher standard of, like, hey, you know, unchecked capitalism also results in the death and, you know, starvation of billions of people when it's abused. But that is really, like, the one thought line.
No, and it's crazy that I feel like he tied that together with, and it's kind of relevant today because me and Alan and a couple of my other buddies were in a couple of discords for like trading, like on the stock market. And Alan has my buddy Alan has a very like specific set of morals when it comes to things he won't invest in. Like he refuses to touch oil for moral reasons. And in this book, he was saying how people have such a disconnect when they're like investing their money and their morals. Like you could buy a share in a slave trading company and said that they had a 6% return on investment or 6% growth year over year, which is like a very solid growth year over year. And like, it's the same thing now of like investing in Nike and like not thinking about like the kids who are in, you know,
in the sweatshop.
In the sweatshops working 13 hours a day, like missing fingers from being like close to slave labor for Nike. And it's that disconnect between like morals and like where you invest. And it's the same.
Well, then it's also your buying as a consumer, like who you buy from and what type of food you buy and products, etc.
It trickles down so far. You could I feel like you only care so much, you know? There's like higher level. There's like, you have your morals and like you're like your top level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I will never support this. Then it's like, I really don't like this. And it's like, I'm not a fan of this. I'll deal with this.
Yeah.
It goes from red to green.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like that yellow area, it's like, dude, nobody's gonna invest in slave trade. And nobody's gonna like if you actively know someone has a sweatshop, like you're not gonna invest in it.
Yeah.
And like
Dude,
even if it's for moral reasons or just like political reasons, like you can't, like people won't. But then once it's like nobody's not gonna invest in like Smith fucking Fire Farms or whatever it's called, like the pork producer, and like they're, you know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, like it's just a pig. You know what I mean? Like
No, but he totally made, that was my next point, is that like the fact that he brings this whole morality thing in investing to like slave labor and killing 10 million people in Bengal, like 10 million Bengali.
yeah.
And then he jumps to, oh, by the way that we consume our food is by torturing and killing 50 billion animals a year. And it's like, these are the things that you buy into as a consumer.
yeah,
And that
you could tell.
But it's, I just thought that,
points that he.
Well,
so,
he's a
like, you could
vegetarian,
tell
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and he's a
I'm pretty sure
Buddhist, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
Was it not kind of crazy that he's like tying the morality of investing in slave labor to that of, you know, like what like aggressive agricultural and, you know,
Yeah, it's wild, dude.
tying slavery to
like,
killing cows. And I was like,
There's a
that's a little bit of a
difference.
push.
You know,
That's a little bit of a
I
push.
get it, and like,
Oh, okay. Hear this.
It's like
Okay.
a pig
I'm
and a
not
human.
volume because of Shane, but okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, you're gonna
So
cap the volume, whatever it's called.
Yuval Noah Harari, he is a vegan and he meditates for 2 hours a day.
Exactly.
Of course. You get the bias now.
Dude, that's why
Nothing's
I was
wrong.
like, bro, in the last chapter, I don't know if you got to it, Lucas, or not, but like, he was pushing Buddhism so
Yeah, no, I
hard.
saw that. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, like you didn't go, you were like an antagonist to every religion, and then like you're such a proponent of Buddhism. Like in the
Makes it
last
sound so
section,
good. Wait, dude, I also highlighted a part where he was like low key conceited, talking about, he said, a good historian can find precedent for anything, but an even better historian knows when these precedents are but curiosities that cloud the big picture. And I just wrote conceited much. Like, you're a really good historian by saying this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this dude also threw the most backhanded comments at America. Like nationalist
The entire time.
You up by
The
his
entire time.
standards. I feel like this dude threw the most backhanded comments at us. I'm like, dude,
It happened.
where did all your book purchases come from, Yuval? Where did they come from? You tell me, bro. Okay, I would love to see the data. I was like, towards the end, I was like, are you shitting on us right now? Like, where does he live, Shane? Jamie, where does he live?
You can pull it up.
This isn't starting. You're fucking Googling this now. You
Jamie!
just earned yourself a Google.
Jamie, where does he live?
Right, where's my...
Come on, don't make this awkward, bro. Just do it.
I'm not looking it up.
Come on.
So, dude, I think that it's just interesting how he's a vegan. Like, you can kind of see, like, of course he is.
Why
By
did
the
you
way,
Skype
like,
message it to me? United States. Okay, cool.
I
bro.
didn't. He's actually from Israel. But anyway, I don't know. Like, he's not wrong is the thing. Like, you know, he's making good points, but like, he's not really presenting any other side.
Well, you know what
You
the
know
thing
what I
is?
mean?
I don't want to say because like I'm not a historian, obviously, but it's like
Oh, you're
have
not.
the luxury of cherry picking information from today to 10 million years ago. Like you could find arguments to fit your case.
No, of course.
I mean, no matter what it is.
I feel like you addressed it though, that he is a good storyteller though, and I feel like that.
Yeah, but there's a difference between a good storyteller, you know what I mean, and like a factual fucking educator or whatever the hell you want to call them. You know what I mean? Like I enjoyed the stories, I definitely did. Like I don't know if it was just like because I hated the last section and I was getting real fed up with him, or like what.
Wow, there's some serious. Yeah,
I was like, all right, fuck you, dude. You know what I mean? And I was just like, all right, like he's a good, like if you're a good storyteller, write a fiction book. You know?
No, but you can tell a story.
I know.
Also, wait,
Relax.
I thought something that we glossed over that I thought was really funny was when they were practicing for the Apollo 11 mission to go to the moon. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were like they were just out in Texas somewhere, like Arizona.
I cracked up at this
They
part.
bumped into like the Native American tribe, and they were like, oh, like we believe in moon spirits. Can you repeat this message to them? And they were like, sure. And they said it in their tribe's native language, and they're like, all right, repeat it back to us to make sure that we know it. And they like made them repeat it like 5 or 6 times. And then when they got back to camp, they like found someone who spoke that language, and it translated to, don't believe a single word these people are telling you. They've come to steal your land. I thought that was so
You
funny.
can't hate him, bro.
Yeah, no, right?
He's not wrong.
They were protecting their spirit, their moon spirits.
What was the first thing we did? Throw our flag on the moon, you know?
Yeah, there you go. Stealing their land.
I think one thing that I also heard that he talked about, he brought up this idea of like culturism, that like the idea of like, oh, if people aren't racist, then now they say like culture, like they say this culture couldn't, join our place. And he basically said like, he made a lot of, like in Marie Le Pen's speechwriters have shown the door on the spot, had they suggested that the leader of France's National Front party go on television to declare that we don't want those inferior Semites to dilute our Aryan blood. Instead, the French Front National, the Dutch Party for Freedom, blah, 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 they made this other argument about how it wasn't good for like their values and stuff like that. And like, right, so I just think that the issue here is that he says, he continues on, he says that like, it's harder for historians and anthropologists to disavow culturism. After all, if the differences between human cultures are trivial, why would we pay historians and anthropologists to study them? And I think this is the stupidest fucking argument that I've heard in this entire book. And it's so frustrating because how could he say that? He's basically saying that, what he's saying here is that the differences between human cultures are in fact trivial, and he's saying if they weren't trivial, then, or if they are trivial, then how could you have a reason to study them? And he's basically like taking a jab at people who are studying the differences between cultures. But like some cultures believe that women are property, and some cultures believe that gay men should be murdered.
Dude,
like
the entire book is him talking about how different cultures are. Like, it's such a vast fucking extreme.
And he's saying that there's this idea of culturism when people are against against the way of life of other cultures. And like, I think that there are serious problems with a lot of culture. Like, of course, there's problems with like, quote unquote, American culture. There's problems with every culture, but there are some cultures that just don't align with certain values or with human rights. Like, there are some cultures, ones that he mentions, that still practice female genital mutilation. So that females, and that think females are purely property, and beat females in the street for trying to go to school because they shouldn't be educated. Like, there's serious problems with some cultures that need to be addressed that people don't want to talk about. And I feel like this argument just like is so, this idea that there's like a problem with culturism, that we can't hold cultures to a certain higher standard, is like just so dumb. Like, I just find it so absurd to make that sort of a point.
I feel like I completely agree with you. You know what I mean? But like, our culture's not basically within states. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you had a problem with a culture that did what you were saying, don't those typically subside within a specific geographic area?
No, well, there's cultures
to a degree,
there's religious cultures, there's, political ideologies, or that sort of like culture, which isn't really a culture, but there's really religious cultures. And then there's also actual,
but like the extremist cultures that you're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Country cultures is what I'm talking about then. At that point.
Yeah, but this is more of a religious culture.
Are you saying that like borders are enough of a difference that they can act in those ways without affecting people in other
No, but he's making the
I'm saying
against,
that
he's talking about immigration, though. He's specifically talking about people saying that this community won't be able to essentially become a part of our culture because of these cultural differences. And he's saying that that's another form of racism, which I think, like, sure, people can do that, but like, at the same time,
isn't that
are we not allowed to hold people to higher standards?
Yeah, exactly. Like if we were gonna induct another person into the fucking books, beers, and banter club, like, should we be able to have everybody involved? Or if some fucking dude was like, a rapist,
If a dude was a
murderer,
white or if a guy's a
misogynistic,
white
fucking crazy
nationalist, like
person,
we don't do we.
yeah, dude, we should be like, nah, we don't fuck with that. You know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's just what I.
No, you're not allowed in our group, buddy. Like, sorry.
Wait.
Yeah.
So you're agreeing with what like Le Pen
No.
fucking team said?
Well, yeah, I'm
I don't know. I'm agreeing with what Shane
not,
said.
No,
so
I'm saying to Shane the exact. I can't fucking find it now, which is driving me nuts. But that
you
exact.
read 5 pages, bro. How could you not
No,
find
the
it?
exact phrasing. There was no exact phrasing of what she said. He put words, and he said she wouldn't go up and say this. So she said, the European right-wing parties which oppose Muslim immigration usually take care to avoid racial terminology. Marine Le Pen's speechwriters would have been shown the door on the spot had they suggested that the leader of France's Front National Party go on television to declare that we don't want those inferior Semites to dilute our Aryan blood and spoil our Aryan civilization. Instead, the French Front National, the Dutch Party for Freedom, the Alliance for Future of Austria, and their like tend to argue that Western culture, as it has evolved in Europe, is categorized by what democratic values, tolerance, and gender equality, whereas Muslim culture, which evolved in the Middle East, is characterized by hierarchical politics, fanaticism, and misogyny. Since two cultures are so different, and since many Muslim immigrants are unwilling and perhaps unable to adopt Western cultures they should not be allowed to enter, at least they ferment internal conflicts and erode European democracy and liberalism. So he's saying that
was that still part of the quote, though?
That entire thing.
No,
it wasn't.
that she didn't actually say that.
No, I
That's
know
the
it's
whole
not
point.
quote, but was like they wouldn't
Yeah.
have thought, and then all that extended from it.
No, but Shane, that's
No.
also the point that they're making. That is. Do you know the politics of like Marie Le Pen? Because that is absolutely like she was anti-Muslims coming into the country.
I understand. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that it's okay or it's right or just to be, quote, anti-Muslim coming into the country. I think that based on someone's culture, I think that with certain ideals, I think that it's right to question them and to look at their ideals and try and understand where they lie on a spectrum of ideals. Like there is the difference between believing in certain ideals, like that women should undergo, genital mutilation and never be able to have an orgasm, or they shouldn't. And like there are people
that is extreme, though. But like, so do you?
No, but that's not extreme. That's a large sect of the religion. I'm not I'm not like some expert here, but I'm just saying that there are people who believe that. So I think that the idea here is that he's saying that this is a form of culturalism. I'm saying that we should be able to hold people to a higher standard. Like if you don't
should we not
believe in the same values,
if is the
they not be allowed into
them into our culture? Is that the whole thing, or to let them be? Still?
If you had all right, Lucas, hear me out. If you had an option, not saying that this is the case, but if you had an option and someone was going to emigrate into Canada from the US and they said, I am a member of the KKK and I believe that anyone that's not white is inferior and that's just a fact. I won't do anything about it, but that's just what I believe. Would you choose to accept that person because they don't share your political ideals? You probably
so Lucas
wouldn't.
Is from Canada?
I'm saying So I'm just saying that, like, looking at someone's what they believe in.
Argument. I understand your argument, but that's not the case right now. Are you saying that should be the case, that we should sit someone down, put them, like, tie them to a lie detector test and, like, put them through, like, a morality
No,
check?
you don't have to tie people to a lie detector test. People with these beliefs are very open and honest about what they think. Like, that's the whole point. It's part of their
It's not totally true
system.
if they're trying to come into a country to share those beliefs. Like, they would lie at the gates and be like, of course I don't believe that. And then once they're in, they'd share those beliefs. But I'm just saying, do you think it's okay to be, like, culturalist and to not allow people to enter a country based on their beliefs?
If someone's belief was that they think that women are property and that they shouldn't have any rights, I'm going to tell them, look, I don't agree with you. I don't think that you should be a part. I don't think that you should be coming here.
So you're saying that we should have stricter policies to let people into not just this country, to any countries, if they don't culturally, and I'm not saying culturally align, like they have to fit X, Y.
What do you think? If I did that scenario, of course it's the logical extreme end of the scenario, but like let's just take it into account. What would you say?
Having legislation like that can be very dangerous, and you can end up having it fit into a broader picture of Islamophobia and having it be a much
Sure,
more
but I think
dangerous
that I
legislation.
think that it's
that's the slippery slope. But if you go from one point to the other, it's like if you have the extremes, like listen, if I had control of who could immigrate to the United States, it might look like, hey, listen, anybody who's like doesn't abide by human rights shouldn't be allowed in here. You know what I mean? Is that the worst case scenario? Is me saying somebody who looks at a woman or looks at a child or looks at a black person or looks at a gay person and thinks they shouldn't live, I don't want them in my country. Is that the worst thing that ever happened?
Absolutely.
Am I being discriminatory? Sure. But against who? Like vile people? Okay. You know? Like, I don't see, like, the problem in that.
I agree. I agree in that example. I think I'm just coming where my argument spawns is from how in the world will you ever roll that out without...
No, you can't.
Of course.
You can't.
Yeah.
That's the problem with everything is that you can't decide who's what and who's what.
I didn't need to dive down into, like, the culturalist argument.
No. I think that it's
It
just
sounded like you were very
about.
on point with, like, the other side of this argument.
No, I mean, obviously you don't want people in your, like, you know, in your world with, like, adding to your culture who are putting dangerous beliefs and negative beliefs in the sense of, like, any of the examples that you guys have used. I'm just saying where my, you know, fears of policy and understanding, like, what it would take for that to be realistic, like, that's where my fears come in, is to, like, how do you actually do that? But yeah, I mean, the whole point that he was making is, like, as we move towards being in a single empire, you know, like, that's where we're moving towards. We're no longer, you know, borders still exist, but humanity is now coming closer to one. Races are becoming less and less of, you know, a point of contention. And now it's, if anything, it is culture. It's just, that is, like, as you said, a slippery slope, because where do you start to draw those lines?
But then where do you not draw the line? Like, that's the thing to think about, though, too, is like, okay, let's just say there's a scenario where people have this belief and we have the option to decide whether it's okay or not. Like, I think, do you let that, like, that's just, it's a tough thing to think about because, you know, unchecked.
So what do you do when, like, let's say in Arkansas, right, there's a town and 80% of the town is involved in the KKK? Like, what's the answer?
Yeah, I think that's our problem with our culture. Like, we have problems with our own culture.
No, I know, but I'm saying, but that being the case, what do you do? Like, what?
But at the same time, I think that, like, look, I'm not against anyone who supports any religion or any religion in particular. I just think that when it comes to religious ideas in particular on the cultural side, they're not renounceable. Like, you can't change your mind about religious ideas because they're written down in the words of God. Like, they don't change. Like, that's where they're more dangerous, because those beliefs aren't things that we can work on to change. They're written in, like, law. This is the word of God, and this is law. And I think that religions, as a general in totality, we should hold to a certain standard of, like,
I also feel like that's like, I totally get that, but, like,
that's not the argument he made in the book.
Shit changes also.
He's talking about religion and immigration.
The whole thing.
I'm pretty sure, like, the Catholic Church is, like, not totally opposed to, like, gays nowadays.
Well, that's because, all right, well, so that's the difference. Well, that's the difference between different religions. Is that, like, look, there are differences between religions where some are able to morph and change what they think, because some are interpretations of the word of God, whereas others are the word of God that cannot be changed lest you want to be killed. Like, literally, like, you can't reinterpret the words of God. You can interpret stories and what people think God was saying, and it makes a big difference.
I agree. Can I just, this is the last time I'm going to fucking bring it up, I promise. The argument that he made about fucking Le Pen and that whole thing is how important phrasing is, that she can say their Western ideologies and culture don't align, or our Western ideologies and culture don't align with their Eastern ideologies and culture, therefore they're not a right fit. is a way to say things in legislature and legally to then have racist law put in place.
No, but I think I think yes, maybe for some people, but I also think that that's an easy point to pin on someone and just flag and say it's a very easy way to kill an argument is to say you're racist. Like, or you're like, I think that it's not like, I think that a lot of these people probably are, I think that there is, when it comes to different cultures, like we're talking about, there's massive differences. And I think thinking about the beliefs and ideals of different cultures is an important conversation to have. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if it would even have any effect. I think it's just an important thing to think about.
You know what's funny too is that like racist, you might not be like, you might only be able to call somebody racist from like a different point of view. It's like if you've been brought up and if all you know is to like not like this group of people, like you don't not like them because of their skin color or their ideology or whatever. It's because that's all you know. But it's the other person, it's like the third party determining if you're racist or not.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
Going back to
I'm not saying nowadays. Like
no.
I feel
that's also going back to the last section of like us versus them, and like that now we're getting to the point where there's a collective us and there is no them. But yeah, you're totally right in the sense of you're brought up in a culture and this is all you're taught, and that these people are Shane's frozen.
You're lagging a little bit.
You're frozen to me.
Oh, I'm frozen. Oh God.
Lucas is frozen to me too.
And Shane's not frozen to me.
I think that all right, I don't know if I'm still lagging here, but I think just the idea of like we should look at these things and have a conversation around them, like fundamentalist Christians who believe that gays should be stoned in the streets. Like I'm not exactly fucking parading them around town as the ideals of American culture. You know what I mean? Like that's just what I think that we should. Like, I don't think that that's right, no matter what you say you believe in.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to agree with you or condone that behavior.
I think the only reason I'm stuck on this thing is that Le Pen is like a fan of funding de-Islamification of France. And like, that's the whole point that I'm like.
I don't care. I don't know who Le Pen is. I'm not really worried about who she is. I'm just worried about the topic of at large. I'm just thinking about the idea and the essence of it.
I got pigeonholed. But that's what I was focused on, that he was using an example of dangerous verbiage to make something sound better than it actually is, that like her belief is, something wild and racist and fucked. Culturalism is definitely something that, to a degree, yes, you should be able to listen, I think is the first step, and have some control over people coming into your country, for example, if they are of a,
But doesn't that make it so hard?
But it's so subjective.
It makes it so like people are like, oh, like I mean, like
it goes back to what you're saying, Joey.
Don't let the Syrians in. Like, okay, granted, I don't know much about that situation, but like, you can't just let people in. Like, it's either everybody's fucking in, or you like systematically decide on who is not a fit. But I guess it would be a fit, but like who's not the polar opposite of what we believe in. You know what I mean? Like you can't you can't just have like if somebody was like, if there was a culture, let's just say no man's land, and they were like, yo, we hate women, we hate blacks, we hate gays, we hate fucking white people, we hate Christians, we hate Muslims. But like, you know what? We're being oppressed over here. Let's come to your country. Like, do you let them in? Do you say like, yeah, bro, what's up? Like, come to our country? You know what I mean? Like, it's not as simple as it's like you think, like people think it is. Like when people have complete other ideologies than what, for the most part, people in a certain country or region believe in. Like, you can't just be like, yeah, dude, like, we're an open country. We have open borders. Like, come on in. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you hate 90% of the people that live here and you're a violent group. Like, yeah, dude, but we're an open country. Like, America's like, dude, it's a land of opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, you come here, you can make it. Like, what's up? Like you can't just do it. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Well, I
certain,
think that the thing about
there's a
culture
certain
too is that
point.
culture spreads, and like like that. It
Exactly.
sounds like, and I get that this
Exactly.
is used. I get that this is used to promote racist or culturist, whatever, if you want to coin that term. It's used to promote these quote unquote culturist ideas, and I understand that, but I don't think that they're necessarily like, I don't think that the idea of like, hey, is this something we should think about, is inherently in itself something that's racist or quote unquote culturist. I think using those ideas to say, because you have a vendetta or because your intent is to keep a certain people out because you don't like the color of their skin or you're against their
Yeah,
religion or
that
something like
becomes
that, I think
racist.
that's where you're, yeah, that's where you're being racist, when you're using it
But
as
if
a
you have
reason to
conflicting
justify your racism.
values, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with that, you know? Like if you, Shane, if you were a person that had polar opposite values as mine, like we disagree on some shit, but like if you had polar opposite values as mine, like are we obligated to be friends? You know what I mean? Do I have to fucking like you?
Do you like Shane
No,
anyway?
No,
I don't.
I don't know.
You
It's a
know,
hard
so if
topic. I think it's
somebody
hard.
had, so if a culture of people, if fucking, you know what I mean, if fucking 5,000, 10,000, 30,000 people had that same belief that was polar opposite than a specific group of people, should they be obliged to accept them based on the fact that what? They're like a semi-accepting country? You know, I'm not even talking about the United States. You know what I mean? I'm just talking in general. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like it's like a very difficult discussion to have because it's like, yo, you don't like, everybody wants to be nice and everybody wants to be open and accepting and like everybody wants to be like, dude, listen, we're all here for each other. It's humanity. If somebody has the polar opposite beliefs as you, like how do you welcome them in with open arms? You know, like how do you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just an interesting, I think it's something that needs to be talked about, but not like at the same time, it's a hard conversation to have because there's fundamentalists on both sides. Like I think
Yeah,
that, like there's people who are like modern versions of these ideas, and I think that it's not people, it's just the ideologies behind certain things that I think we should think about and discuss and like
yeah.
try to understand. And like I don't understand it well enough, and like this is a good,
Oh, absolutely.
like this is a good reason to
Yeah.
think about it more. But I think that religious fundamentalist religions themselves have inherent problems with that clash with basic human rights that we believe in. And so I think that we should, maybe it'll be interesting to do I think we should do a series on religion so we could better understand these and have a better discussion about this. But I do, Lucas, I do share your same like point where I don't like giving any leeway to people who can use this type of a conversation to promote a sort of racist ideology or you know um but I think that it's just something that it's hard because it needs to be talked about, but it's also something that can be weaponized.
Yeah.
I don't
Wait,
know.
so
That's so interesting thing to think about there. That's just something that popped up in my notes.
that really struck me, didn't it? I thought another one that I just like wrote that he took a hot take here when he was talking about like the destruction of ecology and like just how humanity at this point is just destroying the planet. He said it's not actually destruction, it's change. Nature cannot be destroyed. I just thought
Yeah.
that was a very interesting take. And I don't know if I agree or disagree, but it goes back to like his whole argument on like what is and isn't natural.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting that his the way that he would look at the world is like humans aren't destroying it, we're just changing it. But I don't know, I thought
Yeah.
that was something that like I guess I just wanted to hear you guys' opinions on.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I don't know if it's like a down the middle answer or not, but
Yeah.
it's like in certain regards, like if you think about like how many miles of rainforest we destroy every year, And like, that's destruction. Like when you talk about change, it's like, okay, well, it's like, oh, when he was talking about like the chicken example, you know what I mean? Like we, even in that point, it's somewhat both. You know what I mean? Like we changed the chicken to be like fat and slow, but we also destroyed what the chicken once was, you know? But it's like, it's a super tough point to say that, like, I feel like people, at least Homo sapiens are selfish, you know? Like that's what I got a lot from this. Like we did a lot for our own benefit. But at the same point, if we didn't, where would we be? You know? It's like if we didn't, who knows? Like that's a tough question too. But it's like if we didn't, you know, change the like the biological structure of chickens and of cows and of like everything to like fit our needs, like would we be as advanced as we were? You know? And that goes back to like Shane, like last episode.
About slavery.
You know what I mean? Like if we weren't, the United States wasn't based on like a slave economy, you know, which it was. It clearly was. And that's non-disputable. You know, like where would we be? But like these are all like hindsight arguments that like
well also, and to go back to that, he very much said in this chapter, he highlighted that slavery was never a thing about race. He said just as the Atlantic slave trade did not stem towards hatred of Africans,
it was about profits.
So the modern animal industry is not motivated by animosity. It's the same
of course.
Yeah, exactly.
He said it in the last section. He said, dude, it's not because they were black, it's because they were more suited for the climate.
Well, I think that what happened was that I think that the
middle
racism came after. I think that the racism came after and was because of the racism was born of slavery. It's not like slavery was born of racism.
Yeah, no.
Which is an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not that people were like, oh, we're taking these people because they're black. It's like, oh, they're black and they're slaves, so we ought to think of them as less of us. You know, it's not like there was no preconceived notion prior to that.
Yeah.
At least in this book. Beyond, they like, what do you say? They handle malaria better, or like whatever.
And they were like more
climate.
The climate.
Yeah, I mean, it was a purely economical thing. Like these people.
And then when they were here, that's all the people that you saw.
Exactly. So at that point, it's like, okay, well, you know, like, all right, everybody has slaves now. Well, if you're going to be derogatory to somebody, who's it going to be? The person owning the plantation or the person working on the plantation?
Yeah.
You know, so you're absolutely right. Like it stemmed from that. You know?
I think the interesting thing about like when he gets into capitalism and its effects is like how he talks about countries and how the Dutch and the Netherlands like came up. And because they were good, essentially, like the world, like debt and credit became the foundation of the world.
Sick. Yeah. That was insane. How credit is what really got us out of into the Industrial Revolution and into the scientific revolution and where we are today. It's not me stealing a piece of the pie of your pie. It's me helping grow the pie.
Yeah, for the future.
Yeah, for the future.
And I think that like what was interesting there was like I think there was a lot with consumerism and capitalism and etc. I think that what was interesting for me was seeing how states and countries relied on forms of debt and credit to say like if you didn't, how like in Spain they lost their control because they weren't paying back debts. Whereas, and he used that story of the two sons, like to illustrate, like if one of your sons goes to Spain and lends money to the king, and the king doesn't pay him back, and then throws him in jail and says, "I need more money from you," or you're get convicted of treason, you're not going to go lend more money to the king. But the Danish, or I mean, not the Danish, the people in the Netherlands, the Dutch, you'll lend them money because they'll pay it back.
Well,
and then they get lent more and more money.
The idea was you're not lending it to the king. You're lending it to the businesses that are then backed by this, by legislation and the government of the Netherlands. And then when the king says of Spain says, "Hey, if you don't give me an additional 10,000 after the first 10,000, I'll throw you in jail," versus the person in the Netherlands who stole your money to go to Paris to like make shoes that didn't work out, you can still go to the Dutch government and be like, hey, this person stole my money. And where in Spain, the state is there to back the king.
Yeah.
In the Netherlands, the state is actually there to back like just what's just and what is right, and you end up getting your money back.
That's what was interesting, is that there was a checks and balances in terms of power in the Dutch, like amongst the Dutch too, where they had.
But was there really, like, I feel like at that, like what you're saying, like there was between state and
people,
market,
market
or whatever,
market.
But I feel like the market had like the fucking lion's share of the power. Like, well, at least me, while I was doing this, I was like, bro, like,
no, for sure.
Government power is a fucking facade.
Was it the East India Trading Company or something? They had 100,000 people in their army.
I think it was like 300,000,
or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the state nationalized the army.
Oh, in India, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, how fucked up is that? But just like the fact of being that, it's like, I feel like when I was reading this, like the most I got out of it, it's just that like the king is like the front of power. You know what I mean? He's the face of power. But like behind that is like the merchants, the business, the market.
Yeah. Well, that was enabled because that's because they let businesses flourish, instead of like in Spain, for example, where they talked about like the king was just taking everybody's money to finance wars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to your first point, Shane, that you brought up the quote of how, like, you know, in the 1500s, Asia had 85% or whatever, the lion's share of the world's like GDP. And then you jumped to the,
1900s.
Yeah. And it was 5%. And I think it ties to this, that first of all, you had Europe taking on credit and using credit as an advantage to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But also that whole thing leveraging, and you know, it's almost synergistic behind expanding knowledge and technology, and like actually funding the, you know, creation of new knowledge. And then the whole thing that this was just fucking nuts to me, that the first non-European power that tried to send a military expedition to America was Japan. That happened in June of 1942 during World War II.
Wow.
We're talking 1942. The first time that Europe sent anyone across, what was 1492? So we're talking a 500-year lag.
Yeah.
They had no interest in it.
That's because they weren't a capitalist society, so they didn't have this idea of let's grow the pot bigger, and it wasn't a moral duty. It became your moral duty to.
But that's going back to the point that I was going to say, is that you had Asia being this massive portion of the pie, and then you jump forward 500 years and they're only 5%, and it's because they stayed in the mentality of the pie doesn't grow, we take from other people's pies, whereas the rest of the world was growing.
And specifically European countries.
Exactly. That's totally the first conversation we had.
No, we never got to that point, but
that's like the first point we brought up.
No, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was fueling that with the whole credit decision.
So they said like, okay, now that we grow the pie, like then they said, okay, well, we can make this even further, because credit is what enabled that essentially to grow the pie, because you had people who could start a business or fund something without real money in the bank. And it went from like the example of like, oh, if the bank opens up and they have $1 million and then someone wants to take out a loan for $1 million, they give that out, and now they have, you know, $0. And then the person comes back and they want to take out another loan. Now they have $2 million, and it turned out like they had $3 million in the bank somehow, but really there was only like $1 million in circulation or something like that. And they were like, basically went through that example of how there was money being lent out that the banks didn't have. And so I think that this is also interesting in that like it enabled so much growth, but he talks about how the capitalist system requires this level of growth. And it goes back to a point that we talked about, where growth slowing down and not having that level of economic growth, it means that these practices of lending out a ton of money and assuming that that money is going to come back in full and then some, because the pie is going to grow, as soon as growth slows down, that system becomes extremely fragile. And it becomes like, if one thing, if something bad happens, you know, that's why the Fed, and he talks about how the Fed has been printing money for the past 20 years, just kind of hoping that growth will get reignited within the laboratories and things like that amongst like scientists, and how essentially they're just hoping that we will get growth off the ground before the next bubble bursts.
Yeah,
And, like
it's all based on trust.
But this bubble,
the whole
is credit
thing
bubble.
is based on trust.
Yeah.
But
Trust in the future economy will be better than today's economy.
But
which everybody, I feel like for the most part, everybody has. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have like a pessimistic view on the future, like more people than not have a view that like,
but you also
tomorrow
need real,
will be better than
need,
today.
No. But the problem is you need real. You don't need just trust. You need real growth, because without real growth, you just keep going further and further into debt, like we're doing. And we haven't had real economic growth in the form of like actual. We haven't. Since essentially like the 1970s has been an inflated version of growth, and certain things have gotten more expensive. We had cheaper versions of goods, but we haven't had real economic growth from invention and like inventions of industry. We've had increases in productivity, but that's resulted in firing and losing jobs, and then that results in lower economic growth because there's less labor and things like that. But like by doing this, like what he's talking about, the printing money over the last decades, we have the trust still, but that's so fragile, and we're just making the problem bigger and bigger and bigger and hoping that we will get this level of growth back to bring the problem down. But if we get to a point where this gets so big and we lose that trust, then like the whole thing
if we haven't had, like, what is that level of growth then? We haven't had it already then.
No, like the internet and the .com bubble.
Yeah, like the 1970s, 50, we haven't grown in 50 years.
Yeah, there is a website. What bubble bursts?
Yeah, like it's all based on trust.
But this bubble,
the whole thing is based on trust.
Yeah.
Trust in the future economy will be better than today's economy.
But
which everybody, I feel like for the most part, everybody has. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have like a pessimistic view on the future, like more people than not have a view that like,
but you also
tomorrow
need real,
will be better than today.
No. But the problem is you need real. You don't need just trust. You need real growth, because without real growth, you just keep going further and further into debt, like we're doing. And we haven't had real economic growth in the form of like actual. We haven't. Since essentially like the 1970s has been an inflated version of growth, and certain things have gotten more expensive. We had cheaper versions of goods, but we haven't had real economic growth from invention and like inventions of industry. We've had increases in productivity, but that's resulted in firing and losing jobs, and then that results in lower economic growth because there's less labor and things like that. But like by doing this, like what he's talking about, the printing money over the last decades, we have the trust still, but that's so fragile, and we're just making the problem bigger and bigger and bigger and hoping that we will get this level of growth back to bring the problem down. But if we get to a point where this gets so big and we lose that trust, then like the whole thing
if we haven't had, like, what is that level of growth then? We haven't had it already then.
No, like the internet and the .com bubble.
Yeah, like the 1970s, 50, we haven't grown in 50 years.
Yeah, there is a website. What?
Yeah, but you have to understand this ties into the whole consumerism thing, and that.
Yeah, no, we haven't had real
consumerism.
Like, what's real economic growth if it hasn't been in 50 years?
I don't think Shane is right here. I don't know where that.
In 50, I feel like a lot has happened in 50.
No, we've had, all right, yes, we've been growing. Of course, we've been growing small amounts, but not extreme increases in.
Well, the internet hasn't been around for 50 years.
Dude, yes, the internet hasn't brought massive new forms of labor and prosperity to people. Have you seen the wealth distribution and the wealth inequality? That's not.
Yeah, but like, what does
a
that
symptom
have to
of a growing
do
economy?
With, like,
my company exists because
what do you mean? How does it have to do with a
growing
economy? Inequality.
Amazon.
Yes.
What are you talking?
I think inequality is not dependent on like the average person.
No, look at wages. Look at wages.
Wait. Why?
And then look at
the total. All right, but look at the
because
salary in circulation.
Think about,
is that not greater than 50 years ago?
Yeah, no shit, because of inflation.
All right, well, times 50 years by 0.3%.
Look,
tell me it's not greater than that?
No way, Shane. What the fuck are you talking about now? You're so. there's no way that you're saying that there hasn't been significant economic growth in addition to the world GDP in 50 years.
There is a website, whatthefuckhappened in1971.com. Literally, read it and look at the graph. Okay, growth in productivity and hourly compensation since 1948.
So we can all see it.
Yeah, I'm just making the point that I think it's interesting that we talked about the whole, like, this whole idea of debt and the fact that it's based on truth, and the idea that we need to get to a point where we're actually, there will be a point, like Joey brought up the point that the American, like, everybody believes in the economic system and thinks that growth will always continue. And I think that that idea, judging based on where we're heading with in terms of the increase in price of goods and things of that nature, and the non-growth in terms of wages of the median male, I think causes a major tension that has the potential to cause people to start losing trust in its economic system. Is like, that's the general gist of the point. The reason why I brought this up, I think it got bigger because you started saying, like,
first time you used the word trust. Just saying, I feel like that is a total fair point. You didn't say you did not bring the word trust into this before.
Okay,
you're not wrong.
That's fair. I think that this is just an interesting. I've came across this website and these arguments about what's happened since the 1970s, and I think it's a very interesting thing that we should think about.
Yes.
Not like in this conversation, but it's an interesting thing to just maybe even just reading about this. I don't know. Maybe it's another topic for books, but it's just an interesting to look at the actual data.
Yeah. Can I just bring up another quote that I thought was fun in the book?
Yeah.
Since we're talking about this book, Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. He was talking about there was that whole section on time. We're not going to get into it because on a time front, we've been talking for like an hour and a fucking half. No one's going to get to this point in the video anyway. But they were talking about World War II and how every hour BBC would report on the news. And at the beginning of that hour, they would toll Big Ben. Like, they would hit Big Ben. And that would be the beginning of the news stream. And that, quote, ingenious German physicists found a way to determine the weather conditions in London based on tiny differences in the tone of broadcasting ding-dongs of Big Ben. So they were
crazy. The Germans were so fucking advanced with
right?
Like science.
But how smart is that? To like have someone tune in to the BBC radio and listen to the tone of the bells and understand, oh, is it good to place an airstrike on London or not? Like, the shit like
is it
that.
rainy out? It's a more dense sound or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I just thought that was such a cool fucking quote.
Yeah, I remember reading, I don't know where the fuck it was. Maybe something we read in the past or maybe just something free reading. But it was saying how the Germans had a lot of scientific advances because they had no regards for like other human lives. So like they could come up with like, this is a bad example, but like how long a body could survive in ice before it died. Let's just say, for example's sake.
Oh, you're saying that since
they could come up with that because in their concentration camps, they would put like a Jew in ice and like see what, like we had humanitarian rights, and we would not, we wouldn't conduct such an experiment on a person. You know what I mean? But like because they were able to do these experiments on people, they had a lot of breakthroughs when it came to like the human body and like what it was capable of and what it was not.
But it also at the same time though he spoke about in the book a bunch that their scientific research was also funded by the government to then support what the government's views were, in the sense of
exactly.
Blood was the blood that was of like a greater human.
Yeah. So well, you're not going to be fucking freezing a random person if you didn't believe in the call. You know what I mean? Like if you believe in all humans are equal, you're not going to be, subjecting somebody to these experiments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, it's also interesting to think that like in that case and in other cases, it's like I'm not saying if we didn't have this regard for human life, but like how different might our experiments be if we were able to conduct them on you know what I mean? Like how far would Neuralink be if we could just fucking shoot chips in people's heads all day and see what we could do.
Yeah, if
you know what I mean?
No,
it's like if we had no regard for them, you know what I mean? If we took a bunch of criminals and we're like, hey, like we're just gonna, hey, you're test subjects now. Like, how much farther could we actually be? Probably a lot farther. You know,
dude, that's
probably
not the craziest idea to take people on death row and put them towards scientific.
Yeah, experimentation. If you die, you die, type of thing. You know
what
I mean? Like you're gonna die anyways. Like that's a.
I'm not.
I know. Relax, bro. Relax. We're just talking.
What, Shane?
We're not actually saying this. You know, we're just talking.
I think you just actually said it. I don't know if that's. Yeah.
We're just talking, okay?
You're saying that like tests.
We're just shooting the shit.
Phase 3 trials after they go through like lambs on medications, let's say we're talking about like a cure for COVID or a cure for AIDS or something that like, in a sense, has potential to really do damage to a human's life. Like,
yeah, but we don't know. And like mice aren't sufficient.
Why not do it on someone who's on death row and is going to be killed anyway?
Yeah.
Shane.
I don't know.
I think that because
somebody that's already convicted,
we're not going to allow
they're already convicted. They're going to die. They're going to die anyways.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people are also wrongly convicted on death row, and then we're putting innocent people to further amounts of torture.
All right. I thought this conversation would go this way.
Yeah. Anyway,
I thought it would hit that.
Sorry, I'm not just going to jump on board for experimentation
You're right.
on people on death row
for killing people. Yeah, whatever you say.
Plug our socials. We're done.
Twitter.com/beers, books, and banter.
Nope.
Beers, books, book, and books.
Oh my God, who let this guy talk?
All right, guys.
You got it. You got it. You got it, Joey. Come on.
Books, beer, and banter. We'll have the cool intro by next week, so it don't make a difference. Just read the script, okay? Someone made it an hour and a half. They're gonna watch. They're already following our Twitter, and it was So next section is what is it, Lucas?
Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Something Shane's gonna have an opposition on, but it'll be fun.
We actually haven't decided this yet. We probably should while we still have the episode.
There's 4 parts to this book, so it's easy again.
Are there?
Yeah.
Wait. Can we just make sure we're not fucking ourselves again? So like the 4th part just is slaughter.
Well, this book was fucking stupid in its format. 75 pages, 75 pages, 75 pages, 150. Dude. Who does that to somebody?
Oh, this one is the same exact thing. Don't worry.
No, it's not.
No, wait. It's this one is 81 pages, 100 pages, 100 pages, 100 pages.
Okay.
Right, that's fine.
So, Lucas, you know how much to read for the 4th section?
I got you, bud. So, next week, we're going to be talking about Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. It'll be the first section, first 81 pages, I think it was. Follow us on Twitter and YouTube. Those are two platforms that we're on. And
I'm not going to lie, this book was a Pulitzer Prize winner, so it's probably going to be a good one.
Yeah, so order on Amazon while you have the chance. We're giving you a week's notice here. So.
Yeah, and we're good people. We don't have affiliate links in it, so.
Not yet.
Come on, dude. We're not taking that stand. They're going to be there. They're going to be there soon enough.
Fair warning, they're going to be there soon enough. So buy it while you can, or don't buy it and wait to support us, because we're 3 broke, privileged white people.